Right, so Jeremy Hunt has just dropped his autumn statement. And for anyone looking forward to more cash thanks to Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, it's now pretty much all been taken away from you. He started with the pain. Inflation, the rising cost of everything we buy, has risen by 11.1%, the highest it's been since 1981. Of course, the Tories blamed Putin and how that has affected the global energy market too, minimally in our case, but they'll never admit that, of course. They blamed the pandemic. They should try asking the Tory twat in the I'm a Celeb jungle about a missing £37 billion that we could obviously do with right now. What they didn't, of course, mention was Brexit, nor the lie of Tory austerity that made so many people dramatically poorer, well before the current cost of living crisis that wrecked so much of our public services, leaving it vulnerable to what came after and what we're living through now. So taxation we knew was going to have to rise to fix this black hole figure the Office for Budget Responsibility have calculated, and the Tories always follow what the OBR predicts, despite their predictions having less chance of coming to pass than Mystic Megs. But it's what they do, it's how they set out their future plans. Ultimately, it's how their plans, however they come by them, affect us that counts. The 45 pence tax rate, which only affects those earning over £150,000, will now affect everyone earning over £125,140. Bit of a weird figure. So it's a hit on the highest earners, though, along with cuts to the dividend allowance. So beneficiaries of stocks and shares will pay more tax, with the threshold also being cut for capital gains taxpayers as well. For once, Tory tax rise is going where they should. But of course, only because they have no choice in the matter. They've taken from everyone else over the last 12 years. There's nothing left to take. Almost. The biggest hit, and it comes by stealth, as is always the way, is the freeze to the tax-free allowances to income tax, national insurance and inheritance tax until 2028. The thing with these thresholds is they don't budge due to inflation, but inflationary pressures force wages up, which will push more people to end up paying more tax as their tax-free allowances expire faster, and indeed it'll push more people into paying tax for the first time. Same goes for national insurance. The biggest tax take, again, is coming from ordinary working-class taxpayers, as always is the case with the Tories. Windfall taxes, previously treated as a dirty word by the Tories, have been embraced, weirdly enough, with the energy tax levy being increased from 25% to 35%, though the catch that came to my mind was with the likes of Shell avoiding this entirely in exchange for prospecting operations and the like, will they simply ramp up such activity and keep avoiding paying it? The more interesting option, I thought, was a new windfall tax of 45% on electricity generation. The likes of Shell, again, for example, not only produce such energy, which they dodged their taxation on, don't just supply energy, which they've been handed billions by the government to offset people's bills, but the generation aspect connects production to supply. And it's hard to see how such a windfall tax is avoidable, but you can bet they're looking for one right now. Other sources of income announced, including the scrapping of the vehicle excise duty exemption for electric cars, which is counterintuitive, frankly, but Cunt figures, since more of them are moving to them, he's got us over a barrel over this. Business tax rates remain frozen, which will have the same effect for small and medium businesses as the freeze in income tax does for ordinary working class taxpayers. Though some vague mention of a transitional relief scheme has been mooted, not a lot of reassurance for SMEs then. The news isn't so bad for those working below the tax thresholds, who never exceeded, the poorest workers in the country, those that are reliant on benefit top-ups to top up their wages, and the same goes for the long-term sick and disabled as well, for a change. All benefits are rising in line with the 10.1% level of inflation of earlier this month, which, after years of below inflation rises or freezes under the Tories, they basically had no choice here. People in this demographic, disproportionately disabled people, their carers, single parents and the like, have been hit harder than anyone else for more than a decade. They've nothing else left, barely scraping by, but incomes rising to meet inflation is only keeping pace with where we are at now. Let's not forget that. Great for them if inflation starts coming down, not so much if not. That said, the energy price guarantee support will continue for another 12 months past April, with £500 support for all households, £900 for households on means-tested benefits, £300 for pensioners, and £150 payments to individuals in receipt of a disability benefit. Pensioners will also be reassured by the protection of the triple lock, and pension credit also rising with inflation. Now you'd think more spending would be off the table right now, but it isn't so. And the reason for that is the price tags to much of the spending announcements being made are being kicked down the road past the next election in 2024 to as far as 2027 and 2028 in some cases. £280 million for the DWP to crack down on benefit fraud again. Yes, that old chestnut. Though nothing announced for the far larger issue of tax avoidance and evasion. Again, same old Tories. By the end of next year, everyone still on legacy benefits was meant to be rolled onto universal credit. However, for employment and support allowance claimants, Hunt only mentioned them. That goal has been kicked down the road until 2028. Defence and overseas aid budgets will continue pretty much unimpeded. The education budget is increasing by £2.8 billion per annum. The NHS and social care are getting a combined £8 billion of extra funding. But as is always the case with the NHS, is it actually going to the NHS or to private providers operating within it? They've been instructed to look for more efficiencies too. You can guarantee that will be aimed at the actual NHS and not those that just wear the badge. A whole new nuclear power plant is coming, Sizewell C, in the name of energy independence. So it tickled me no end when Cunt, without a trace of irony, mentioned EDF's involvement, who are, of course, French state-owned. It'll go very nicely with the EDF/Chinese-funded power plant being built already at Hinkley Point. We don't fully own it, so how are we energy independent? Answer me that one. More infrastructure, more devolution in the form of mayors, and you can see a lot of spending going on when apparently we needed tax rises and cuts to spending. Well, almost half the total spending cost, as I said before, is being kicked into the next parliament, when the Tories are likely to be out, and thus making paying for all of this another government's problem. As always with Tory financial statements, all the reading needs to be done between the lines, and more sleight of hand will no doubt come to light as more of the detail is dug into.